All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name's Tim McDonald, and I am coming to you with another episode of Advocacy at Work. And today I have a very special guest and our first actual founder of an organization, Trevor Maxwell with Man Up to Cancer. How you doing, Trevor?
I'm doing great. Good to see you, Tim. Thanks for having me.
No, I'm so glad you're here. So we might have a few added questions today, just because you are the founder of Man Up to Cancer versus everybody else that we've interviewed so far, which works for an organization but didn't actually found it. So
Yep.
Glad to have you here. But before we dive too far into this, why don't you just give us a little bit of a background of, you know, Man Up to Cancer, how you founded it, why you founded it, and then maybe if you could just throw in there kind of like how you define advocacy when it comes to the work that Man Up to Cancer does.
Oh man, yeah, you're really challenging me, Tim, because so Tim, for those listening, Tim and I go back a ways, so he knows that I tend to be long-winded, but I'll try to keep this short. So I got diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer in March of 2018. I was 41, middle of my life, two daughters, age 12 and 10 at that point. And I'll say that it was kind of like a life asteroid. You have one life before cancer, and then all of a sudden I went from, middle of my life raising a family to fighting for my life as a stage 4 colon cancer patient. And that has changed pretty much everything in all our lives. And I really struggled mightily with depression, mental health. So depression, anxiety, even as I was going through all the physical things with cancer, it was really the mental and emotional burden that really, really knocked me down. And I didn't know it at the time, but that was actually the genesis for Man Up to Cancer, because I started to isolate. I really went inside myself. I isolated from friends and family, and my health was just my mental health was just really poor. So fast forward, finally, I got to that point, which is a sticking point for a lot of guys, where I realized I needed to accept help. And I started reaching out and getting help from others, people online, meeting people in Colon Town, the Colon Club, different areas where colorectal cancer patients go for help. And also I was going to the Dempsey Center here in my home state of Maine to get support. And that is really where Man Up to Cancer started, is that I realized in all of these support spaces where people go for help and really to, support them as they go through one of the toughest things a person can face. Most of the people that I would see in those spaces were women. It was almost always 3-to-1 women seeking help from men. And so trying to wrap this up, but in a nutshell, I realized a problem. And like most advocates, you see a problem in the world and you want to try to raise your voice to help with that problem. And the problem that I saw was that men tend to isolate when diagnosed with cancer all the way through to survivorship. And I dug into that problem and learned that it was very real. It's happening. There's a lot of studies to show this. We see it in our advocacy spaces. And that was the problem that I committed to helping to solve. And so right around the end of 2019, 2020, I launched, I guess you would call it a call to action at that point. I always have called it a movement, which is Man Up to Cancer. And real simply, Man Up to Cancer, it's now a nonprofit, but back then it was just a movement to inspire men to avoid isolation during cancer and all of the negative consequences that tie into that isolation. So that's as best as I can give you for like the quick background on Man Up to Cancer. Like, it's really all about men reaching out, connecting, and not going through cancer alone. That is the change and the problem that I see in the world. And that's what I really narrowed in on. And so I guess, like, when I think about the word advocate or advocacy, like, to me, an advocate is someone who sees a problem, or there's some change that needs to be made to better human life, to improve, to alleviate suffering, to improve quality of life for people, right? It's about serving others. And so some advocates in the cancer space are working on insurance barriers, or, cost of living, helping out with finances, helping cancer patients access new drugs. My space in Cancerland is helping men not go through cancer alone. So that's how I view myself as an advocate. In fact, it's funny, like back in 2019, when I was thinking about this, I literally was Googling, because I kept hearing this word patient advocacy. And like, what is a patient advocate? I had no idea. And I'd be Googling, like, how do you be a patient advocate? Like, what is that? So I kind of really did stumble into it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I've toyed around with the term accidental advocate for
yes.
I don't think anybody that's diagnosed with cancer thinks that like that's going to be the forward path for them, but so many people find it once they are in the space, if they are willing to do exactly what you said so many men have difficulty doing, which is open up and search for help.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. Like, I definitely am an accidental advocate because I started seeing a problem. I started really getting into it and like encouraging guys to not isolate, but I didn't realize that actually could be seen as advocacy. And now I do see it as advocacy. So for Man Up to Cancer, when I think of, what an advocate is in our community, it's a man in our community who is willing to raise his voice or be a role model in service of that change, in changing the world, so that men feel more comfortable, so that men feel okay, and make it normal for a man to ask for help when they're going through cancer, to access these incredibly supportive resources and communities, so that hopefully, a generation from now, that this will be a thing of the past where men felt like they just had to handle it all on their own.
Yeah, no, and I was fortunate enough, just so everybody knows, to find Man Up to Cancer within weeks of being diagnosed. I can't believe it's been almost 5 years.
Wow. And congratulations.
I'm like, I got to pinch myself every time I say that.
Yep.
But once I get there, I will be celebrating wildly, because I know that the only statistic I saw when I was diagnosed was that I had about a 13% chance to live 5 years. And the only statistic I ever cared about was being one of that 13%.
Same. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So I'm just past 7 years. You're coming up on 5. So like, we definitely are. We both saw that, and we both said to ourselves, like, we know what our why is, right? And like, we're just going to focus on our why and keep on going. And then you turn around and years have passed, and here we are.
Yeah, it's quite incredible. But so I'm very familiar with Man Up to Cancer, obviously. But I'm kind of curious, because you were around for a year before I joined, and I've seen a lot of changes. But maybe you could just share with us, like, it sounds like advocacy was actually part, in the phrase, in the manner that we're talking about, was part of Man Up to Cancer from the beginning. How has that kind of evolved as Man Up to Cancer has evolved?
Yeah, totally. That's a great question. So I think at the beginning, like, it was just, I saw the problem personally, right? And I jumped into that personally, and it was kind of my call to action. But that doesn't really go very far. Like, what you need to actually affect change in the world is people getting on board. Nothing ever changes in the world from one individual. You have to have others who buy into that. So I think it really started to change when Joe Bullock, everyone in Man Up to Cancer knows Joe Bullock as I call him the heart of Man Up to Cancer. Well, anyways, when I started kind of putting it out there, this Man Up to Cancer idea, Joe was like the first follower to come on board and say, this is what I want to change too. Right. So he was like, I want to be an advocate in that space. So we kind of joined forces early on in January 2020. And then what you start to get is, first you have one voice, then you have two voices, then you have, others come on. Others started, we launched a Facebook group, started a podcast, started doing social media, had a website. And then more and more guys started coming in and being like, hey, you know what? This is something we can get behind. So really the early days was just grassroots, a grassroots call to action, saying, hey, what served us in the past, this like rugged individualism where men don't talk about it, they don't get help, they don't burden others, right? They just get up back on the horse and ride. That old model just wasn't serving anymore. And when you can clearly tell men in the cancer space, hey, if you isolate during cancer, you're going to have worse mental health, substance abuse, broken relationships, worse medical outcome. That's a pretty practical appeal to them to say, you know what, let's rethink this. So I think, that grassroots appeal to say, hey, we need to rethink what men did in the past when they went through cancer. We need a new model that says we're better off going through this together. And so that was what really started to attract just individuals, really amazing men from all across North America and beyond started getting attracted to this content that we were putting out and these ideas. And that's when the ball starts to roll downhill, because another word that I use for interchangeably in our community for advocate really is role model. Advocates to me are role models for others who are looking to improve their lives and that can show them the way to a better life while you're going through cancer. So we started to get, Joe and, guys like, I'm probably not going to list them individually here, but I think of Jared McMillan, one of our earlier role models, like guys who were like real tough guys, but they also were brave enough to accept help, show vulnerability, and be a role model in the community. And so that's when our Facebook group just started to take off and it started to go downhill. So really like the first couple of years were about really the Facebook group, like building community. In order to serve a community, you first have to have a community. So those first couple of years were about building community, bringing people in, really rallying around this message. Like we call ourselves a wolf pack because we take care of one another. So you get role models rallying around that, and that brings on other people because then they talk to their friends like, hey, we got this really awesome guys cancer group going on. Come in here and join us. and then as that happens, then you start thinking like, wow, we have, we start to get over 1,000 people in here. Maybe this can turn into something more. Because if it's all about, for me, again, back to advocacy, if it's all about connecting men and making sure that they avoid that isolation, there's more that we can serve them with. So we started to get like this little leadership team going on. So me, Joe Bullock, Don Helgeson, Danny Riggs, Mike Reilly, Jay Abramovich, like really like the six of us kind of were like the core. We could say like the OG six that were like, we can really do more with this. We can be a leadership team. So then we said, what can we do? And the first thing that we did was obviously, we created an annual retreat. So an annual in-person retreat for men impacted by cancer called the Gathering of Wolves. That was our first program. And then now, so 5.5 years after we started, it has evolved into 3 programs. We have retreats. We do a chemo care backpack program where we send backpacks to men in our community going through treatment. And we have about 40 local chapters. And local chapters for Man Up to Cancer. Most of them are in North America, but it's literally just connecting men at the local level. I think I can say at this point that, Tim, you've been a chapter leader for us in Florida since the beginning of the chapter program. And so those are the 3 programs we have. So really it just evolved from, I know I'm rambling, sorry, but it evolved from a grassroots call to action to lots of role models getting involved as advocates in that call to action to really applying programs to serve the members who are part of that movement.
So it sounds like it was kind of a, and I probably have some personal insights here that's leading me to this question, but it sounds like to me that it was part organic and part like structured. Like the organic part is the guys coming in, opening up, sharing, and then willing to take on more. And then from the organizational standpoint and the structure, you guys developing the programs to help kind of fit in so that all this wasn't going in a million different directions. It was kind of leading towards what could help Man Up to Cancer grow as a whole in an organization.
Yes, spot on. That's exactly what it was. Very organic, still very organic in that I would say the programs grew organically out of what those early members and leaders wanted. When we talked the OG6, committee, and when we talked to our members, it was like, what would you like to see out of this movement? And the number one thing was, we want to get together, getting together in person, because Zoom and virtual meetings and Google Meet, like all these things are fantastic, and they do help men avoid that isolation, but adding in-person contact really takes it to a different level. It's a hard experience to even describe when you're sitting with other men who are going through cancer, who are walking this hard road with you. There's something very, very special there. It's a bond that's hard to describe, which because you feel it. So I think it was hearing from them, like, we want to get together. So that led to the retreat. First of all, we have this annual retreat, but now we have smaller retreats throughout the year, which you helped lead and helped organize. I think one of the, if not, I think it was the first one.
The first one, yeah.
The first one. So, so having the retreats, that grew out of the personalities and the needs of the members. And Man Up to Cancer, we always want to be responsive to the community. Like, what are your needs and how can we serve them? So that's really how the first 3 programs, the retreats, the backpacks, and the chapters, really did evolve. And you're right, there is structure to that. So we have leadership, we have leaders of those programs. We're now an official nonprofit. So we have a framework to doing those 3 programs. And for now, those are the 3 we want to focus on. But in the future, again, organically, hearing feedback from our members as we grow, we could add other programs, or we could shift gears depending, because the bottom line is, as an advocate, as a founder, and as a nonprofit, we exist to serve our membership. And that mission of avoiding isolation, that's not going to change, but that can manifest in a lot of different ways. So I think I think you really nailed it by saying it's a lot of organic activity and guys just coming together and building something, and then creating structure to really support that.
Yeah. And this is the question I love asking, because nobody's given me like just a real clear-cut answer, and I'm not expecting you to, so don't feel like I'm putting you on the spot with this. But I know one of the things in any organization is, in order to get, whether you have a board of directors, whether you have, sponsors that want, to see, how their dollars are being used, you always need to measure the impact that your advocates have.
Yep.
How does Man Up to Cancer go about doing that?
I think so. Before I get into like the details of how we measure, I think I want to lead in with like, really, what's the goal for me? Like, as a founder, like, how do I define success? How do I define success for our nonprofit? And for me, first of all, like, acknowledging that there is a vast unmet need for men going out there who are isolated and can benefit from community and our programs. Like, we know that we're reaching a very small percentage, right? So I would like to reach more of those men who are out there struggling, kind of in the place that I was in 2018, 2019, of feeling lost and looking for community. So we know that there's that unmet need. But for me, the goal is the quality of the relationship. So it's not about a metric. It's not about a number for me. It's not about, oh, we need to go get 10,000 members or 20,000 members or 50,000 members. If your goal in helping people is just to hit a number without it having meaning behind it, then I just don't know what the point is. So for me, it's about providing quality services, providing quality programs that really impact a person's quality of life, so that when we go to our members, whether it's at the Gathering of Wolves or at the end of the year, and we say, hey, is being part of Man Up to Cancer, is being a member of Man Up to Cancer improving your quality of life, or at least helping your quality of life in some ways? Because otherwise, why are we doing this? So I would say the metrics are that is Man Up to Cancer improving your quality of life? And then we have, certain questions we can ask around that. And I'll get into a little bit how we do that, which we need to do more of. But for me, it's if we can reach another, let's say we reach 1,000 guys, next, even if we'll take the number away. Let's say we reach 1,000 guys in 2026. We want to reach them deeply. We want them to have a meaningful experience. We want to improve their lives. So it's about the quality of the programs more than the number itself. So with that said, the way that we do that is just asking them. So at the Gathering of Wolves, we have a pretty in-depth survey when people come out of the gathering that really talks about, like, how did this gathering impact you? Would you recommend it to a friend? And also, how has being a member of Man Up to Cancer helped with your cancer journey? And we look at that. We look at those responses. And really, that was like our first take at like getting member feedback, because we started out as a Facebook group. With a Facebook group, we didn't have emails. It was really hard to like contact all the people in our organization, all the members, and say, how are we doing? Now, just this year, we've moved to our own digital platform on the Circle community, and excuse me, and we're trying to bring most of our membership from Facebook over to this new Circle community, and everyone who joins there, we're able to contact, and we're able to reach out and do surveys, and that's going to really help us dial in our programs and what we do. So I'd say how we measure has been a little rudimentary to start. So we have the gathering feedback, and then we also just take testimonials, right? We have a feedback form that people can fill out anonymously or with their name on it to tell us how we're doing. But now in 2025, as we move to our own platform, we're really going to be able to gather more of that information. And again, the more information we have from our members about their experience, the better we can help them with this cause of not isolating.
Oh, and I love that, because I mean, I think so many people hear, measure, and we think numbers. And I love the fact that you just brought up, it's not about the numbers. It's about how are we actually making an impact with what we're trying to accomplish. And if we are, we're doing our job.
Yeah, that's it. It's like, it's depth rather than, just growth for growth's sake.
Yes. Yeah. So before I get into my last question that I have for you, I'd like to just do like a little lightning round of a few questions. You don't need to think about them, just whatever on the top of your head, just rip it off, and I'll just keep firing away until we get a few out here. So
all right, I love it.
Start easy and get a little bit more difficult. So
I'm good at not thinking, so this is perfect.
Okay. So what's your favorite color?
Blue. Deep blue.
And what's your favorite food?
Pizza, always.
Any toppings?
Definitely not pineapple. Any pizza but pineapple.
For those that don't know, and I will put this in our wrap up, but there's in the early days of Man Up to Cancer, and it still exists today, does pineapple belong on pizzas?
It's a long broiling debate.
So where is somewhere that you've always wanted to go but haven't been yet?
Oh, Africa. Love to tour Africa and go on some safaris.
Nice. What is something that you wanted to be as a kid when you grew up?
I wanted to play in the outfield for the Boston Red Sox or play for the Boston Celtics as a basketball player. Unfortunately, probably right around the age of 13, I realized that that wasn't going to be the path for me. But man, for those 13 years, I dreamed it.
I asked that question once when I was in Copenhagen, and the guy actually said he wanted to be a soccer player, but then he told me that he was coaching soccer, and I'm like, so you actually lived your childhood dream, So my last question before we close out is, pretend that all resources are not an issue. You have all the people that you could get, all the companies that you want to work with, all the money in the world. What would you like to do with the advocates within Man Up to Cancer if money and resources were no option?
Yeah, I mean, it's not too much different than what I hope to get to, even with a modest amount of money, which is 10 years from now, I would like for Man Up to Cancer to be a robust, thriving, international nonprofit that has chapters available so that, all around the world, really. I mean, primarily North America to start, but 10 years from now, let's say you're someone and you're in Indianapolis and you're a guy and you get diagnosed with cancer and you are freaking out and you're starting to slide down this mental health, to a place where I was when I was really spinning out and didn't know where to turn. I want that person to be able to hear about and know about Man Up to Cancer and to access our services, however that looks like for them, so that they can, I mean, really, it's not rocket science, really. So that person knows they're not alone walking this road, that there's a group of thousands of men who are out there walking this road with them, carrying this burden with them, and is willing to, and is going to be there for them and with them throughout their cancer journey, whether that leads to a cure, which we all hope for, right? We all hope for that cure or long-term living with cancer, or whether that person passes away, knowing that there's a community of men who are going through that with them and are going to stand with them through that journey. Like, to me, that's the dream, is that Man Up to Cancer grows organically into that, really that safe space for men, for the social and emotional support in the cancer journey. And that's, if I had all the money in the world and could, that's the change that I would effect.
Well, thank you so much, Trevor. And if people want to learn more about Man Up to Cancer, where can they go?
manuptocancer.org. That's our home base for all things Man Up to Cancer. You can read about what we do, engage with our content, and you can become a member there. Membership is always free. Our programs are always free. We know that men going through cancer are really impacted financially, which is why we really have made a commitment to making sure that they don't spend a thing, nothing costs a thing when they come into our community. So if you're a man impacted by cancer, or if you know a man impacted by cancer who could use a hand, manuptocancer.org is the place to go.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. And I can definitely attest that Man Up to Cancer has done everything that you described this last half hour for me, because I was fortunate enough to find it early, and it still helps me in survivorship. So I really appreciate everything that you do.
Well, I want to thank you. Like, you have been a role model, an advocate, a leader within our community and within other communities. You're a force in the cancer community overall. And thank you for giving me time to ramble. As you can tell, outside my family, doing this work is the passion and privilege of my life. So I can go on and on, but I appreciate your letting me do that here with you today.